YouTubers. The last time we had a lesson, we discussed rest position, and then we discussed playing position, how to get our violin through all the steps into playing position. And then we were plucking the strings with our fingers, right? Today we need to know a few things before we can proceed. Our thumb does not count as a finger in our left hand on the violin, right? So our index finger is essentially finger 1, finger 2, finger 3, finger 4. This is very important, right? Okay. Now when you look at the neck of your violin, you will see on all violins that there is the black part of the fingerboard and the white part of the neck, or lighter part of the neck. Yeah. Okay. So your thumb, your left hand thumb, has to go over both, but not over the fingerboard, right? So essentially, you just have to put it down on that side. Now I'll show you why. We're going to go in rest position. I will turn it, you can see me. And we're going to have our hand cupped like we would tap. And we're just going to move our hand backwards and forwards, making sure we're very relaxed, yes? When you do this, you want to make sure that your hand doesn't stay behind when you move. You want to make sure that your index finger doesn't run away from your thumb when you move. They want to move together to the bottom and to the top. Okay, so we're going to do that quite a bit. This is something you can do if you're watching television. You can do this in front. Now, when you do this, make sure that you're not using your wrist, but that your arm is doing that shape. Okay, right. So that's the first step. Next, you need to do the same action in playing position as so. On, you can see here, thumb, down, and up, and down, and up, and down, and up. Making sure that that line on your finger is touching the neck of your violin, yes, on the opposite side of the thumb, right? Okay, and you're sliding your hand up, and you're sliding it down again, and up, and down. Making sure that you're absolutely relaxed, right? You may put your violin down for now, rest position if you're not playing. In its case, on a table, and you're going to take out your bow. Right. Now, a bow is a very interesting thing. Please note that the bow is very fragile, and should you drop it hard, this part of it may crack. A lot of tension from your bow is on that little part of the tip, right? So it can snap off. Be very careful. Right. And then this we call the tip, and this we call the frog. Yes, this little black part over here. Okay. Right. The hair, do not ever touch the hair with your fingers. Your fingers are oily. And oil actually takes away effectivity of the sound the bow produces on the violin. Okay. Right. Now you'll see our bow's got lovely little curve. Right. Your bow must never be out of the shape of a curve. Okay. Now you'll notice here while looking at our frog, we have our black part over here. We call this a grip. We call this the winding. And then we have a little silver screw. If you look at the hair in relation to the wood, when you turn that screw, you will see it moves further away from the wood. And when you turn it the other way, you will see it moves closer to the wood. Right. When it moves away from the wood, we call this tightening your bow. Right. So you essentially have to tighten your bow. I've got big fingers. that you can fit about an index finger space horizontally. If your fingers are small, then a thumb space will do, right? But you'll see there's still a little curve that remains. You never want it to curve outwards, ever. You always need it to curve inwards. And the reason for this being, when you play more advanced techniques, the wood of your bow, or carbon fiber, depending on which bow you have, is pretty springy. And if you keep it tight that way, it loses a lot of that flexibility. Right. So that is important. So now you've tightened your bow. If you have a new bow and you just draw it across the strings of your violin, it is not going to make a sound. With most violin outfits, 1 minute, you get a little block, right? Which we call a rosin cake. Comes with most new violin outfits. Mine happens to be round, you get square ones and rectangular ones and so on. Now, mine is started already, but if it is not started, if it's shiny at the top, take something like a nail file or scissors or something and scratch the surface. It needs to be coarse, right? Because rosin is actually a powder. And the powder that comes off on the hair is what creates friction to have your strings vibrate. Right. Every time before you play, I suggest you put rosin on. You'll see there's a little silver pot here at the bottom of your frog, which we call the ferrule. Put your thumb well over it, because rosin, being sensitive, if it smashes into that, it can break. If you drop it, it will break. Right. So you're going to put your rosin down onto your bow here, and you're just going to lightly rub it. After, of course, you've started it. You don't need to do too much if you have played before with this bow. However, if it's a new bow, I strongly suggest you do it for about 5 to 10 minutes. You will see it will make little, it's not visible on camera, but almost little dust clouds, little rosin lines. Your hair needs to be white in color when you are done with rosin. It is very important. I cannot stress the importance of rosin. It produces grip, it produces sound quality, and above all, it produces flexibility for your bow. It also maintains the quality of the hair of your bow. If you look after your bow properly, you don't need to rehair it too often. Okay, right, rosin cake done. So now it comes to, we can't just hold the bow in our fist, because otherwise we're not going to be able to do very vigorous bowing or fast techniques or anything of the sort. Right. There are many methods on how to hold a bow. We have the German method, the Russian method, and we have the Franco-Belgian method. I myself use a combination of quite a few of those. However, that being said, the bow hold that I use is most comfortable for me. You might want to adjust it slightly, but nothing may be tense in it at all. So how do we start our bow hold? Well, you look at your frog, and you literally point your thumb upwards of your right hand. So hold your bow in your left hand on the wood, not the hair. Point your thumb upwards and face it that the nail is facing towards where you need to be outside. Right. This part, just above your nail, goes on the wood. And just under your nail touches the hair. Okay. Your thumb, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it peeking through. It needs to be properly covered. Right. Now, you're going to turn your hand almost as if turning a doorknob. you're going to lean on your index finger. That index finger comes between the first and the second joint of your finger, right? You're going to lean your weight on that. These two middle fingers are what we call rabbit ears, and they just flop down the edge, like so. Your pinky goes closer towards you instead of there on top. That is your perfect bow hold, making sure that there's a lovely round space there, not that, which is a collapsed bow hold. You need to make sure it's nice and round. As tempting as it may be after all this time to just put your bow on your violin, do not at all, because it creates quite a bit of damage to the progress you've made up until this point. I suggest you get a little cloth. I'm just going to use my rosin cloth. Put it on your left shoulder. Get your bow hold again. As I said, thumb pointing up, creating a little, almost a window there. Index finger lean between your first and your second joint. Rabbit ears, not past your frog. And your pinky closer to you on top, making sure it is nice and round. Right. That being said, put your bow on the cloth on your shoulder, close to the tip, and you're going to bow, meaning you're going to bring in your wrist almost to touch your nose, and up, and down, almost reading the time as if it being a watch. Dangerously so. It is very easy for the bow to do that, to go skew. Bad practice. You need to create almost a square. Relax your shoulders, elbow up, and it's only your forearm that does the bowing. Right. Most importantly, when you reach almost the end, just above the winding, tilt your bow with your thumb out of it to finish it, and make it flat on all its hair as quickly as possible again. As such. Right. You need to practice that a lot. When I say a lot, it's got to be second nature, not anything else. Because when you add your violin, this is where it becomes difficult. Grab your violin when you are ready, after about a week of practice, or hours of practice, whichever, and get it into playing position. Check that you can hold it, and hold it here when you're not playing. Right. Your bow should be up into the air. You literally lift your hand up into the air, and you're dropping it on the string, right? On this side of your bridge. You're dropping it onto the string. Okay. Right. Nice bow hold, making sure nothing's peeking through. Nice and round. And bow, do not apply excess weight. Do not take weight away either. Just drop it and bow. Remember, turning your bow outwards in the last bit and making it as straight again as possible. Stop. Drop your elbow to the next level of your string. Stop. Next string. Stop. Next string. Right. Firstly, how do I know how to keep my elbow how high? Right. You'll see your bridges in a very interesting little, almost curved shape, right? So put your bow here on your physical bridge, not next to it, on it, right? And trace the shape of the bridge with your bow. Keeping your arm and your elbow at the same level, right? It's not your wrist that's doing it, it's your entire arm that's doing it. And that will guide you when you move it away from the bridge as to how high your elbow needs to be. Right. Raise position, of course, when we do not play. A few tips. When you bow, say the names of the strings out loud again. Stand in front of a mirror when you practice. Look at bow weight, right? So dropping your bow onto your string, do not add excess weight on either finger. Look at avoiding a thumb peeking through. Make sure your bow hold stays nice and spread out right through. Bow with your forearm, bend your wrist, and turn your bow out slightly. Towards the end, and back again as soon as possible. Right. Which then gives you a straight bow. You need, the straighter the bow, the better the sound. So when you stand in front of a mirror, practice getting a straight bow and a good sound. That was the second beginner's lesson. Essentially, actually, after me showing you the shoulder, that is actually what we do in 1 week. You need a solid week to practice this. But that is an example of how to do it. There are other exercises you can do to improve flexibility of your bow and your bow hand, because it will go squonk at the beginning, and your bow arm. This needs to be built. Your arm needs to create stamina. Your body has muscle memory, which tells you how to play your instrument. And it needs to be built over time. Right, so the first one we can do is we take a bow hold, keeping it nice and relaxed. Almost like a car's windscreen wiper, tilted. That is a good way of going about it. Right. Without tensing up your fingers, write your name in big letters on the roof and in tiny little letters on the roof. Stir a big pot of soup and stir a little pot of soup. Yes? Okay. And then as well, a song, the nursery rhyme Incy Wincy Spider. Sing it as you're crawling up your bow, keeping your bow hold, making sure no thumb creeps through, and creeping up. Incy Wincy Spider climbs up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. And then back. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So Incy Wincy Spider climbed up the spout again. Okay, if you're not completely where you should be, don't worry. But keep your bow hold as much as that as it should be. Right. And then, of course, making sure your wrist is relaxed, like an elevator. Up to the top and down again, keeping your bow nice and straight. Once you've done those extra exercises after reading the time, perhaps you will feel more competent to apply it to your violin. Word of warning, please make sure that you do not apply your bow to your violin until you are completely ready. A bad bow technique, or a technique that is learned of not spending enough time on basics that I've shown you, is a technique that might not be able to be unlearned. And if you learn a bad technique, your violin playing is compromised. So please be careful. So what we need to do as a recap of today's lesson are what I call, on those two little parts, I call it the train track ride, yes? Which is this. And then in playing position as well. And then holding your bow, how to hold it, bowing your strings with your exercises. Right. Stay posted. Pretty soon, more videos will follow.